Chapter 1334 Sitting Duck. So you see, little brother, I win in the end. I made sure of it that everything will go my way no matter what petty tricks you might pull. Heavenly Sovereign couldn't get enough of his own voice, laughing like victory was assured. Now, Zhuofan said. At his order, the sacred beasts unleashed their powers, to combine into the black thunder flame before it reached Heavenly Sovereign. Again? Haven't you learned your lesson already? Heavenly Sovereign mocked. I'm of the belief that I did. Why don't you take a look behind? Zhuofan smirked. Heavenly Sovereign flinched and glanced back, seeing the Heavenly Eye pulling Elder Song ever closer to his death, which marked his victory. Placed between, he could not avoid the attack. He cursed, "Neat trick, but you forget that is nowhere near enough to change things. I can just take it and reset my state." Then he smirked, knowing that nothing would change the outcome. Guess again. Zhuofan grinned as he had already given the order to the others to attack, making sure to coordinate with them as well and unleash a fused path attack like before, ready to hit him at the same time as the sacred beast's black thunder flame. He was sure this was going to work, smirking as he saw Heavenly Sovereign gnashing his teeth in frustration. Fine. Let's see what you're made of. Heavenly Sovereign roared. Despite what Zhuofan had hoped, the man was just that determined to get to the supreme stage and cleanse the world. He would let nothing stand in his way, even if that meant at his expense. He would have his wish even if it were the last thing he ever did. Under the shocked gazes of all, the two attacks hit head-on, cracking the air around and rending space to reveal darkness beyond. They themselves were forced back from the aftermath of the gargantuan explosion. Their senses were all going haywire from all kinds of power surges going about. Waiting for the dust to settle, they picked themselves up and looked around to assess the damage. The ground around them was flattened and turned into a wasteland, with not a blade of grass or even a roach left alive. It didn't work. Care cried, staring at the sky with wide eyes and at the peeking Heavenly Eye through the heavy dust clouds. The others snapped to attention. Heavenly Eye's presence proved that Heavenly Sovereign was still alive somehow. Maybe not for long. Zhuofan hoped. He commanded the others to unleash another such attack, to end the battle and their feud. As the new attack arrived, Heavenly Sovereign appeared from behind the dust looking to be torn to pieces, with just his torso and head intact, only to groan and cough black blood, resetting his state in a split second to before. He didn't get to grasp what had happened to him, for the second attack came, taking him by surprise. Change of plans. Zhuofan said. The sacred beasts will attack Heavenly Sovereign while we will go after the Heavenly Eye. I refuse to believe he can split himself. There has to be a limit to his power and how many times he can reset his state, but we must first get Elder Song to join forces with us. The others nodded and went to work once more, hoping that this time they would get to save their newest sovereign edition. They heard Heavenly Sovereign cursing as he came into view again, just as wretched as before but still hanging on. The next second he reset his state and blinked for a moment to assess his situation, time enough for the black thunder flame to hit him square on. Even so, he had sensed the another attack, far more power, was going for his Heavenly Eye. It had forced him to use blink in his now damaged state. Heavenly Sovereign was about to use Void Wall, like many times before whenever he was attacked. Unfortunately, this time he didn't even get the chance, hitting him square on. Damn it. Zhuofan swore. Things weren't going anywhere but in Heavenly Sovereign's favor. All they could now was hit him as they wished, but they couldn't save Elder Song. Heavenly Sovereign would always do something and block their attacks or just take it head-on. But this time it was clear damage was done. Heavenly Sovereign came out of the attack looking damaged and bleeding from the countless deep wounds on him, but as time passed, there was no sign of him using the reincarnation path to heal himself. I see you can only reset your state just moments or a second back. That's why this time you can't do anything but let the wounds stay. Zhuofan grinned, but then soured as he looked at the Heavenly Eye. Elder Song was about to be swallowed. Haha, that may be so, but you still lost. With his path added to mine, there's no way any of you have any chance of beating me now. Heavenly Sovereign spewed blood with every laughter, gloating despite the wounds and the increased blood flow. While he was rejoicing at the gamble he took, and Zhuofan was frantic to cope up with a new way to save Elder Song. A second Heavenly Eye popped up in the sky out of nowhere, right across from the other and pulling at Elder Song in its direction. To the gawked looks of all, even Heavenly Sovereign, Elder Song grunted and coughed blood and viscera as he walked out from between the two eyes' influence, since they cancelled each other out right where he was, joining Zhuofan's side with a weary look on his face and his hair turning white. How in the nine hells is that possible? Heavenly Sovereign actually squeaked, seeing his prized art being copied to perfection. Something Zhuo Fan should never be able to do. Chapter 1335 over? It's you? There can't be anyone else or they'd have done it by now. Heavenly Sovereign barked and pointed a crooked and bleeding finger at the weakened and visibly older Elder Song. Of course it's me. Isn't it obvious from my state that I did it? Elder Song mocked. How is that possible? Did Zhuo Fan pass on my art to you? No, for even if he did, you'd never be able to train it to my level, not when even he couldn't. Heavenly Sovereign looked on with doubt and disbelief of what he was seeing, even as the heavenly eyes drained the last of their energy and faded away as they canceled each other out. Good luck figuring it out. You won't get an answer from me. I'm not dumb enough to reveal my cards just to get a moment in the limelight and get sucked into another creepy eye. It was bad enough my prismatic event already painted a bloody target on my back. Elder Song's weary voice snapped, not at all bothered he was back-talking the strongest being in the world. You just have to live with the fear that you can expect anything from me, keeping one eye on me and another on Zhuo Fan. But I wonder, can you do that? Look at the state you're in, you can't even piece yourself together like before. Maybe the next attack will send you packing. He continued, infuriating Heavenly Sovereign. Elder Song, what are you doing? You're only making it worse for you and us. Murong Shui Shout whispered, shivering at the mere recollection of the nightmare she had lived through and not wanting to imagine what could be worse than that torture. He had won too many close calls already. The next time there might be no one to save her. Case in point, even Elder Song had to save himself when all the rest did everything they could to get him out of the Heavenly Eye's influence to no avail. They hurt Heavenly Sovereign in the process, sure, but the guy didn't look to be so close to falling as Elder Song put it. In fact, he was more ready to send them to hell many times over, if the burning and hateful looks he gave them were any indication. While Heavenly Sovereign was fuming by himself, Zhuo Fan had a private talk with Elder Song. Can you go on? We need you if we hope to survive. I'm sure you sensed how our fight went even before you showed up and it wasn't looking good. Maybe with you we can tip the scales in our favor and get this over with so we can address the other issue. Elder Song sent back, I can still fight but not to the same extent, not if I want to survive, that is. I just hope it will be enough. So what's it going to be, Heavenly Sovereign? Still up to more punishment, or have you had enough? Zhuo Fan challenged the already furious man that blasted him out of existence for some odd reason to everyone else. The shout snapped Heavenly Sovereign out of his little hissy fit, snapping his eyes on Zhuo Fan and even smiling after a moment. Thank you for that, little brother. I almost forgot why I was here and let an unknown variable get to me, but now I'm back to thinking clearer and won't change my mind. All of you shall die here, and you, pointing at Elder Song, will have it the worst of them all. While he refocused on getting their paths and cleansing the world, he wasn't so quick as to get over his grudge on Elder Song for stealing his move like it was nothing. It just didn't make any sense to him how it could have been done just like that, not without centuries of training in his art at least. Why didn't he show the other moves from his arts? Why only the very last one specifically? Great. Here we come. Zhuo Fan declared with a grin while sending a command to the sacred beast to throw another black thunder flame at him. In the meantime he coordinated with the other sovereign, now Elder Song included, to finish him once and for all. Give it all you can, Elder Song. Now's the time. Zhuo Fan added at the end. Heavenly Sovereign was so focused on Elder Song he almost missed the sacred beast's actions, but at the last minute he shifted out of the way, glad his instincts never failed him so far. However, he found himself shifting right before an even bigger attack Zhuo Fan's group managed to unleash. Thanks to Elder Song's contribution, the fused attacks now looked dangerous in his eyes, if not downright deadly. He shouted as he pulled out all his tricks, from void walls to using void annihilation to break the attack, but nothing worked. The attack kept coming and all he could do was brace. The resounding explosion shook the entire sacred domain, with even the sea of blackness halting its advance momentarily. It felt like the fabric of reality was breaking down around them. Any more of this and there might be nothing left to save, not when they would be the ones responsible for its destruction. Is it over? Murong Shui asked with a trembling voice, unable to believe their worst enemy was vanquished just like that, using an attack that they'd been using on him many times already but was never enough to finish the job. It would seem, by all intents and purposes, that Elder Song's addition was what they needed to swing the tides in their favor and be rid of this nightmare. Chapter 1336, Damage. Arg. As light pierced the thick clouds of dust, one could perceive a faint figure, shielded by a thin gray shield of yuan qi. It had no leg. Only half a torso with a right arm and half a head. Nevertheless, everyone here recognized him. He was Heavenly Sovereign. Ugh, being on the receiving end of such power was not what I had in mind when I came to finish off all of you. He grunted, barely holding himself together as he flayed at the seams. Though this is nothing a little reset won't fix, haha. He gloated at the end, though cut short as one moment he was dying and the next, returned to having his body back. He was still wounded from the sacred beast's black thunder flame, having been unable to offset it. Zhuofan was grave, watching Heavenly Sovereign with a critical eye as thoughts spun in his head. He needed to make the damage more permanent and final. Heavenly Sovereign was tired, and upon closer look at his group, they were tired as well. Exhaustion was obvious in such a prolonged fight. Nerves stretched taut, wondering what trick the enemy might pull next, with one misstep capable of ending them. He had to be cautious while the other side could always reset himself. It seemed to never end, as though the fight had just started again. This was clearly a battle of attrition, which was not in their favor. What surprised them all was how Elder Song was the worst off. He was not even able to stand upright as he huffed like he had ran a marathon. He said his path comes at a cost, but I never imagined the cost to be this high. Zhuofan frowned. He needed him for at least one more attack if he wanted to win this. Damn it. What the hell did you do to me? Heavenly Sovereign roared out of nowhere, making the others flinch, being on guard for anything he might be doing. Zhuofan narrowed his eyes, giving the shivering figure a long look as Heavenly Sovereign coughed black blood, feeling his aura growing weaker for some reason. Was his reset faulty? He ventured a guess. Don't patronize me, Zhuofan. You clearly did something. Why else would the reincarnation path not be able to offset all the damage? Feels like my soul is being ripped apart, arg. Heavenly Sovereign snapped in rage, the fury and fear coming out of him in waves from being in the dark as to what was going on with him. But all he knew for certain was that Zhuofan's last attack did something to mess with his own skill. Zhuofan beamed, realizing this might actually do the trick. Since Heavenly Sovereign had no idea what he went through, he could just hit him again and gain until there was nothing left. Heavenly Sovereign would have no choice but to reset each time, but it would only make his situation worse. The tables have turned. How many times can you keep this up? Zhuofan asked Elder Song. It all came down to how long this old alchemist could last. He was the crux of this battle, an essential piece if they wanted to win. 2, maybe 3 times at best. Elder Song panted, winded from that just one attack as well as the heavenly eye he created that took the most out of him. This was why he didn't want to overuse his sovereign power, for it was sure to be his end. He was much more content with sticking to alchemy and the newfound joy in teaching his disciple that he neglected for decades in his obsession with refining before he arrived at the sacred domain. Let's get him before he can recover and make sense of his situation. Now's our chance. Zhuofan sent, making the sacred beasts repeat the previous black thunder flame attack while he and the sovereigns used their paths to unleash a myriad of colorful blasts at Zhuofan's instructions. As the black thunder flame approached the writhing and bleeding figure of Heavenly Sovereign, his grunting jerked to a stop, as did his fidgeting. He gave the attack an icy stare, using his elusive movement he gained from the child sovereign's path to avoid it with ease. When the coup de grace came from Zhuofan as he used the demon transformation art to fuse the attacks of the sovereigns, he just blinked out of the way. He merely watched it hit the sea of blackness, spurring on the speed of its expansion. Heavenly Sovereign's eyes narrowed, knowing that had to be what left him in shambles even after the reset. He gave the group a cold glare, letting them feel his full bloodthirst. Damn it! Zhuofan cursed. He was too rash to grasp victory and overlooked the fact that Heavenly Sovereign might have been faking it into drawing them out. He would need to think of another approach to get Heavenly Sovereign. A glance at Elder Song's even more exhausted figure told him he had to work fast as well. I wanted to avoid this. Zhuofan flew closer to the sovereigns while signaling to come over. Heavenly Sovereign was not one to let them do what they pleased, shooting for them and using void annihilation. Kunping, stall him. Zhuofan shouted, needing a bit of time to get his plan across. The sacred beasts worked under Kunping's orders to send another black thunder flame at Heavenly Sovereign's attack, while also blocking his path. As the strikes clashed, they left behind only destruction and decay as motes of black flames burned the air and the land to nothing, with the void annihilation still coming after the sacred beasts. They had to take on their huge, original forms as it arrived, wanting to leave nothing to chance. The impact flung the beasts in every direction, forming a crater at where they impacted. Some of which soon turned into a lake of their own blood. Fine, but I expect it back once this thing is over. Once Zhuofan told them him plan, Elder Song complained, but nevertheless relented. He saw the sacred beasts getting knocked out of commission if not killed. Chapter 1337, Thrashed. Zhuofan wasted no time to get everyone's path, then rushing out to meet Heavenly Sovereign. He no longer stalled in fusing the paths. However, he didn't do it completely. He was merely leveraging the power the paths gave him, to get the most out of the dark energy they released when combined. His power surged higher and higher, trumping Heavenly Sovereign just as he reared his right hand that glowed scarlet. He recalled his fist and launched a mighty punch at Heavenly Sovereign's face, leaving him shocked at how easy it was to cave his face in. Heavenly Sovereign, however, was plunged into the ground and left behind a bottomless hole. Zhuofan darted right into it, not giving him any reprieve. Tense seconds passed before the ground shook like a raging sea. The sovereigns even thought the earth beneath their feet would collapse, leaving the sacred domain with nothing but the sky to survive. Though it was questionable if there would be any survivors after such a calamitous battle. One time, the ground bulged and stayed that way, forming another mountain range in an instant. Sometimes the ground caved to leave behind a gaping ravine, where one could see lava flowing at the bottom from one end to the next. It was jarring to see what the pinnacle of power could unleash in the sacred domain, and to make matters worse, they weren't even at the supreme stage. It truly was beyond comprehension just what the final stage could offer. Once they had their fill of ruining the landscape for everyone in the world, the sovereigns and the sacred beasts waited. Some took some healing pills before they could finally stand. Even so, they gawked as Heavenly Sovereign when he burst out of the ground, folded from some heavy blow to the gut. That did not last long though. He returned to his previous state just to get dunked into the earth a second time. Zhuofan shifted and went for his side with a scarlet punch, but Heavenly Sovereign shifted as well, right behind him and struck with a 12th heaven purple lightning. Zhuofan didn't even bother dodging. He let the demon transformation art do its thing and absorbed the devastating blow. However dampened, the impact of the attack was still there. He was sent flying into the same pit he helped create just moments before. Heavenly Sovereign hovered there for a moment, grunting as her aura was weakening with every exchange. The 9 paths brought him closer than ever to the supreme stage, but he still refuses to go after it fully. He glanced at the now half-sovereign audience, wondering if he should go after a hostage. The thought had crossed his mind many times throughout the fight, but he quieted it just as fast. At their stage, they knew there could be no compromise. A moment of opening was enough to determine one's death. He could try to take someone hostage, but Zhuofan would never possibly allow it to happen in the first place. Even if he did, Zhuofan and the rest were determined to see his end. Zhuofan flew out of the rubble, brushing away the dust and the rocks around him. He was wounded as well. The battle certainly took its toll on him, but he still had the strength advantage by the looks of it. This greatly annoyed Heavenly Sovereign, who saw nothing that he could use against him. He tried everything, from void walls to mirage world, and all the skills he grasped from the paths he had fused. However, Zhuofan was relentless. Sometimes he could draw blood from him, but he never had many chances to do much harm. Heavenly Sovereign was always taken by surprise in one way or another with his quick movements and swift dodges. Heavenly Sovereign kept resetting his state after every major blow, powered by all the 9 united paths. Leaving those wounds there was more deadly. Naturally, he would not reset if he could. He would do nothing when it could be tolerated, out of worry he might get hit with a devastating strike right after the reset. Heavenly Sovereign, I can do this all day. You can go ahead and use them as hostages, but you know that it won't change my mind. Today's the day you die and nothing you do is ever going to change that. Zhuofan gave an infuriating smirk, especially since he was right. Heavenly Sovereign was getting beaten up, slowly but surely to his death, while Zhuofan was hardly even breaking a sweat. He was in top form from start to finish. There seemed no end to his power. Don't get too full of yourself, little brother. Heavenly Sovereign fumed in frustration and empty denial, knowing he was right. Just what could he do to turn the tables? What? He was so frantic in coming up with a way to win that he forgot his initial plan. Only as his eyes darted around everywhere for a way out of this mess that it all came back to him. It was when his gaze lingered on the sea of blackness creeping ever closer. Of course. How could I have forgotten? I have allowed him to drag me into his own pace, but not anymore. Haha, you're wrong. There's always a way for me to win, and I'm going to take it even if it costs me everything. Heavenly Sovereign cackled, having gotten his solution. Zhuofan was on guard, ready for anything. Then show me. But Heavenly Sovereign left him and the others shocked still as he fled. He shifted constantly until he entered the sea of blackness. Please tell me that he got sick of getting beaten and chose to die with dignity on his own terms. Yi Ling said, turning to Zhuofan as he hovered over to them, only to collapse as he landed, coughing out blood. Chapter 1338 Lunacy? Needing a good minute to stop from voiding his stomach of blood, Lei Yuding was there to help Zhuofan to his shaky feet. He was whiter than paper. I thought he'd never leave, ugh. Zhuofan grunted only to cough again. But you were winning. You could have beaten him and finished this damn feud. Murong Shui shouted. It was no exaggeration to say that she wanted that monster dead more than anyone, not just because she pursued the greater good for humanity due to her beliefs and path. It was also due to the horrible torture she had been through. Trying to push the path close together but not too close so they couldn't be separated has its drawbacks, as you can probably see. That goes double for trying it while fighting to the death. Many times I had Heavenly Sovereign pinned with a strong attack, but one path or another slipped out of the precarious balance and forced me to change my tactic. I had no choice but to weaken my attack at those times. Zhuofan continued, no longer masking his crumbling, which was not weaker than Heavenly Sovereign's. Fighting any longer would surely expose his state. It would have given the enemy the perfect chance to kill him, and the rest of them soon after. But why would you take on such a risk? Defeating Heavenly Sovereign takes precedence over the paths. Kunping's demand earned a round of frowns and grave looks from the new sovereigns, who had just formed their paths. They would very much like to keep it and continue their pursuit with it as their base. Having learned from Murong Shui that the first path was just the beginning, they were going to continue pursuing another and another, until they themselves reached the supreme stage as well. They would do it at their own pace and not forcing it like Heavenly Sovereign. The dire circumstances made it highly likely that such a feat would be impossible, since Zhuofan was the only one who could fuse them and jump into the supreme stage if the situation demanded it. It was their only hope of defeating Heavenly Sovereign. Even so, to say that they were fine with sacrificing their path would be a lie. They would much rather avoid the worst-case scenario if they could help it. Then again, it was better to lose their paths than their lives. Murong Shui could attest to that. She didn't give in back then because she knew the outcome wouldn't have changed either way. Because, for one, I respect everyone's wishes, and two, it's not how I want to reach the supreme stage. I know that not taking shortcuts like Heavenly Sovereign did takes time. Even so, I'm still willing to go ahead with it. Furthermore, who is to say that taking the same route faster would yield victory? Maybe we would be equals and end up fighting for days, years, centuries. What then would become of the sacred domain? Turn to eternal darkness with no one left to save? That would make it all pointless. Zhuofan raised his voice in his speech, making him have a coughing fit. I refuse. He continued. This is the only way I see possible. The only way to truly overcome this enemy and rid us of future troubles. Are you returning our paths then? To give us the chance to reach the supreme stage as well? Jiolong asked, eager to see where cultivation would take him. No, I still need them for insight into forming the remaining paths to advance. I believe we can all agree I can do it faster, especially since I was the one who helped you get your paths to begin with. Now if you don't mind, I better get started. Zhuofan replied, ignoring everything else as he sat down then to mull over the different aspects of the different paths. He compared them to his own beliefs and concepts in regards to the world. This was what the sovereigns needed to do. Understand the world first through their subjective view, then feeling it on themselves the way the world worked in ways words fail to describe. That's just absurd. It's ridiculous enough you could complete so many paths in just a little over half the year you were gone, than the 2 months before. Now you are saying you're going to accomplish it at an even faster pace? On what grounds? Murong Shui wasn't finished, and the others looked skeptical. They were worried if it was even possible. There was a reason no new sovereign appeared after millions of years since the old ones disappeared. Now Zhuofan was suggesting he could do it over tea? That was lunacy. Murong Shui's glare was sharp and deadly as she held the calm Zhuofan in her sights, wishing she could strangle him. But a minute passed and the guy didn't so much as twitched. She ended up grunting and allowed him to do as he pleased. She soon went to the rest of the sovereigns at the side, who were discussing with Elder Song what he had been through during his event. She wanted to ask what exactly had been keeping him from joining the battle for so long. A prismatic mote of light flew just then and entered Murong Shui. It flew in before she could ask anything. She shivered on the spot, relishing at having gotten her path back and how right it was to be with her. She soon snapped out of the relief and asked Zhuofan, I thought you needed our paths to complete your own. Why give mine back so soon? Don't tell me you have already gotten the gist of it? She let out a cold smile, thinking she was right, but Zhuofan's answer only crushed her spirit. I sure did. It was the easiest of them all, since righteousness and demonic are just two sides of the same coin. Both paths seek to understand humanity's demons. They only differ in what they do with that knowledge. Righteousness does it for the greater good, to relieve people of persecution, while the demonic path is guiding them towards the user's own goals. Zhuofan sagely said, leaving her gawking. Chapter 1339 Creation. Why do I get the feeling he's toying with me? Is he doing this on purpose to get a reaction out of me? Murong Shui asked no one in particular, for the other sovereigns and sacred beasts were just as shocked. To think he could figure out how to complete a new path just like that? Then again, demonic and righteous paths were truly very similar. They needed but a different perspective to see where they split. That made everyone pause, contemplating on their next pursuit in cultivation, aligning it with their goals and hope. Yi Lin was the first to wake up from his thoughts and turned a curious eye to Elder Song, who was now sitting down from having overworked himself in battle. One might think he would keel over from just a nudge. Still, that didn't stop the rash Yi Lin from bothering him. Elder Song, how is it you only joined the fight when one of us was dying? Your prismatic event already ended when Heavenly Sovereign came to check what triggered it. It also gave off such incredible power. Yi Lin's question got everyone's attention, focusing on the old man with envy, amazement, and respect. The entire Luo clan's leadership was focused on the events Zhuofan triggered, to glean from them truths and concepts to help them further not only their cultivation, but their knowledge about the world and cultivation. The first time it happened was when Zhuofan inspected the legacies he got from the four sovereigns in the Nether Sea. It proved to be such a boon to all that they were bumped one entire stage to the Emperor stage in no time. Thinking back to the grueling work they had to do to advance one stage back in the mortal domain, they all felt sour. Heavenly Sovereign had truly robbed their future. They could have gotten this far centuries ago, perhaps even without needing Zhuofan to nudge them in the right direction. Looking at it another way, however, they realized that adversity bred progress when entitlement led to regression. If not for the thin spiritual energy in the mortal domain, they wouldn't have been forced to seek other avenues of strength. Invincible Sword was the prime example, even able to overcome the mortal domain's limitation, despite ending up killed in the end. He plunged the entire mortal domain into the fires of war for one thing only, to progress and grow. What he gained from the Sundering Sword couldn't be matched with anything else, and thus sought to gain the other four divine swords at any costs. The same applied to every one of them here. While not at the level of Invincible Sword's dedication and pursuit, they all followed their goals in one way or another. It helped them build character and determination. When they arrived in the sacred domain, they didn't sit on their haunches and waited for the thick spiritual energy to fill the gaps. No, they worked just as hard if not harder. The fact they were sovereigns proved as much. My attempts to learn alchemy have led me down a dangerous path, not even realizing where I had strayed. I believe all if you know of the many explosions that nearly took my life. Elder Song sighed tiredly, not bothering keeping the entire process to himself, knowing that each person's circumstances were different. The others nodded, looking back with fear at how devastating his power surges became, and always around another prismatic event. Even while I was refining, I always tried to make something no amount of ingredients could ever hope to achieve. Yet one time I succeeded and failed. Elder Song went on. You mean that translucent pill that saved you? The same one you gave Murong Shui? Kunping asked. The very one. It was by no means complete, yet it defied everything I knew about alchemy. How to refine it, what to use, and even when. It led me to understand that I didn't need fire, cauldron, or even ingredients to make what I wanted. Elder Song grew excited. What? You're saying that you made something out of nothing? That's impossible. Dragon Ancestor denied the possibility at once, knowing how ludicrous it sounded. Is it really? Elder Song raised his palm and a miniature heavenly eye formed, making the others shiver as they felt its minute pull. I've made my breakthrough only as I discovered this truth and used not anything else, but all of myself into creating my path. Everything went to making my path, and from it, I formed myself again. That's how I became a sovereign. I call it the creation path. That's why your prismatic event was so absurd. It's because you were closer to heaven's will. The act of creation. The creation of the world and everything in it. Murong Shui gasped. While I can create anything I put my mind into, it takes too much out of me. Mere rest also won't be nearly enough to recover. My very being is drained. My soul, body, and mind, it is all being drained to achieve what I want. That's why I didn't save myself unless I was sure none of you could. It was so that I could fight with you all for longer. Though we all know the result now. Elder Song sighed. Why the delay then? Why did you join so late? Co asked, knowing he could have spared them being at the whim of that almighty sovereign. I was helping my apprentice find his path as well, as I've been doing since Senior CAO graciously pointed out in my lowest moments. Refocusing on guiding Yen Fu showed me things I've never knew. Things I've regretfully neglected, aspects about alchemy I took for granted. It was this shift in perspective that led me to complete my path. Now, I hope he will too and rid us of Heavenly Sovereign. Elder Song finished his tale. They discussed longer, bouncing ideas between each other after that, each learning greatly from everyone's experience through the events but also in life. Meanwhile, Zhuofan would casually send a prismatic mote of light every now and then, sometimes fast, otherwise slower, showing steady process in reaching the supreme stage. As for Heavenly Sovereign, none knew when he would be back, but it was certain he would return. Chapter 1340 Miracle? Lei Yuding flew through the air, her mind elsewhere. The past month had been quiet, too quiet. There was no sign of Heavenly Sovereign being alive or dead. Though everyone knew things were far from over. The sea of blackness gained further ground nearing the place where Zhuofan and the others battled Heavenly Sovereign, where he was currently meditating on their paths. She regained hers just 5 days after Murong Shui, not caring why he could do the things he did, just worried that he had to push himself above and beyond to rescue them in the world. At the very least, Lei Yuding was grateful she could be there to help him, especially in the last battle. Though she doubted she could make much of a difference in the final showdown. Regardless, she would never abandon him. She didn't do it when he was numb and locked in his own body from the pain of loss, and she wouldn't do so now. Lei Yuding was coming back from Black Wind Mountain, having gone to talk with the other girls, assuring them that everything was fine despite the tumultuous events triggered by the insane battle of survival. Now she was on her way to Zhuofan and the others who were keeping vigil just in case. They were eager to glean new insights from Zhuofan's actions and from those around them. Since they only pursued their goals, to further their cultivation and discover the world and themselves, they had no conflicts. Nothing the other knew or had was mandatory in speeding up their progress. They would either share their experiences or not. Either way, their way forward was their own alone to tread. As Zhuofan came into view, Lei Yuding's thoughts cleared and her mood brightened. How is he? Has there been any change? She landed next to Kunping and the other sacred beasts, inquiring about the situation while she was gone. The wizened and shrewd beast in the form of a man said, "Only a couple days ago he gave back Elder Song's path, but he's still meditating. I can only assume it is to complete the 10th path, but who knows how long it will take and if we have the time." Kunping sighed. At least we now have hope of defeating Heavenly Sovereign once and for all. No more gambling, no more staking things on a harebrained plan, but actually winning with overwhelming superiority. CAO spoke with relief and confidence. Yes, Kunping nodded. We were right to put our hopes on Zhuofan. But the entire affair showed me that the rest of humanity has the same potential of overcoming any adversity. The sacred domain never had such a character rise up before. Though that's because they were always nipped in the bud by their own people. The sacred mountains would rather stifle humanity's growth as long as it kept them in power. In a way, when Heavenly Sovereign sealed a part of the sacred domain to make the mortal domain, he was setting the stage for his own undoing. It's ironic how he did it to seal us, sacred beasts, from interfering when he was affected by the bewitching. It robbed those people of the rich spiritual energy, leaving them to find other avenues to strive for supremacy, even if their goal is to mostly to throw their weight around. Still, sometimes good seeds do emerge. CAO declared. I don't really care how it all turns out to be some kind of poetic justice. I just want Zhuofan to be alright and not go through further pain as he did before. Even now we almost lost Miss Murong. Lei Yuding brought them back to the situation at hand, showing that no matter how things had happened, it mattered more on how things would continue. Would Zhuofan survive or would he die? Would humanity perish or live on? Lei Yuding and the girls had the first question more on their mind than anything else. Elder Song stood up from among the other meditating sovereigns, making his way over. With a bit of luck, that won't be a problem. His vague smile left the sacred beasts and Lei Yuding puzzled. She asked, "Why do you say that, Elder Song?" I didn't delay joining the battle just because I wanted to help my disciple, given the unique circumstance of the occasion. It was to also nudge him into completing his own path, to aid us in defeating Heavenly Sovereign as soon as possible. Hopefully before Heavenly Sovereign does any more damage to the already dying world. Elder Song gave a worried glance at the dangerously close sea of blackness, knowing it would reach them in a couple of days if not sooner. But as these things can't be rushed, I had to take a cautious approach. It's all up to him now. Elder Song finished with a smile of pride on his face. All we can do now is wait for Zhuofan to gain the last path first, or Heavenly Sovereign to come at us with the intent to kill us all. Or maybe he wouldn't even have to once he reaches the supreme stage. He could just snap us out of existence like we're eyesores. Dragon Ancestor chuckled as he recalled how useless he was by himself in the last battle, certain the next might very well be his doom. Why can't you see things from the upside? Kunpeng grumbled. What, I'm being realistic here. It's been an absolute miracle things went as they did, with Zhuofan's reckless plan actually working. I mean, putting his hopes on the Luo clan's people to reach the sovereign stage while he just happened to complete the paths disguising the prismatic events to hide the truth from Heavenly Sovereign. Don't tell me that sounds perfectly logical to you, because I ain't buying it. He raved. Now that he put it like that, they had to agree. All of this was just ridiculous in how it played out. At least they were happy it worked. Chapter 1341 Storm. Kunpeng had been watching the sea of blackness growing closer and closer with every inch, with every minute. His worry mounted all the while as it got closer to Zhuofan, who was still meditating in complete silence. Zhuofan might be confident it could never reach him or affect him. However, Kunpeng was doubtful. If it were up to him, he'd drag Zhuofan from here and back to Blackwind Mountain. There, at least, he'd have some more time to meditate and contemplate the wonders of the sacred domain to his heart's content. Or, at least until Heavenly Sovereign kills us all. What a sobering thought. Glancing at Lei Yuding, she was quite calm by comparison, if one ignored the casual twitch whenever she found the sea of blackness speeding up. In the first day when she arrived, she struggled not to warn Zhuofan. She even wanted to take him away from here. Kunpeng believes she came to terms with this being Zhuofan's decision. Turning his attention to his godchild, Gu Santong Care, and Sword Child, they were far more at ease. Perhaps it was from the many years and countless dangers they faced alongside their father. At the end of the day, they always managed to come out on top in the end, be it through sheer luck or Zhuofan's genius and strategic mind. I guess I should calm down as well, since no amount of worrying is going to change anything. The Sea of Blackness will eventually arrive, and Heavenly Sovereign would continue to pursue the supreme stage, wherever he is. As if by providence, the answer came, shockingly enough. There was a sudden half the Sea of Blackness for a moment or two, before it rapidly shrank. All that was left was a barren wasteland, with not a trace of life or sign of vitality. The sudden turn of events made everyone breathe easier, at least at first. Then a veritable storm far in the distance arrived, which made everyone's hair stood on end. Even the sacred beasts were trembling at its sheer power. Every thunderous explosion rent space and the ground like it was made of putty. It dawned on all of them, who it was that was capable of such radical display of unbridled power. Heavenly Sovereign, grunted Dragon Ancestor. He just never gives up. If he held on for millions of years, I'm sure a few days wouldn't deter him. Xiao said dryly. What do we do now? Zhuofan needs more time, and judging by the looks of that storm, we'll just be throwing our lives away if we try to stall. In fact, we won't last a second. Sword Child squinted at the strong waves of power whirling their way, not in the least bit thrilled he'd have to go in there. It's either standing here and wait for Heavenly Sovereign to kill us all, or go there and try and mess with whatever he's doing. At least we'll go down in a blaze of glory. At least everyone will know that we've fought until the bitter end. Kunpeng spoke gravely. If only Yin Fu had hurried up. Elder Song sighed. Finding his efforts were for naught was a heavy blow to him, especially since it was in a time when the others needed him most. Look on the bright side, at least there's no more Sea of Blackness to devour the sacred domain. Dragon Ancestor tried lightening the mood with a tasteless joke. Yeah, we just traded one certainty for another, only the first was far slower. We're all dying of joy. Murong Shui said flatly, not at all amused, nor were the rest. So are we going or not? Dragon Ancestor ignored the tough crowd. He asked the real question as he took to the sky, his decision obvious. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Gu Santong said. Or Dad. The others nodded as well, going together towards the heavy explosions and rumbling, knowing they would not be coming back. As they drew closer to the eye of the storm, the sky turned completely dark, with not a star in sight. They also failed to notice a flash of prismatic behind them. Heavenly Sovereign was looking to be on his deathbed from the countless gaping wounds. The black blood seeped without stop, with his aura waning. By all accounts, he should be riding his will not cackle like a madman. This was how the group found him, wondering how could a dying man be capable of unleashing so much raw power. Is this really him? Kunpeng took a closer look around and noticed that there were two prismatic moes hovering around Heavenly Sovereign. sometimes closer, sometimes farther, as if being drawn and repelled by something he had. He has the final paths and is looking to refine them. Cao gasped. That's why he fled. He had a backup plan by taking the remaining paths in the Sea of Blackness. And here I was hoping the Sea of Blackness would finish him off. Lei Yuding grumbled. Let's not waste any more time. We need to put a dent in his plan. Kunping shouted. He was the first to fly over, shooting an azure phoenix at the paths. He knew from the past battle that Heavenly Sovereign was untouchable, even if wounded. Thus the attack pushed one path further away but not by much. Heavenly Sovereign still managed to bring them even closer towards himself. You. Just sit tight and I'll deal with all of you. His hoarse voice rumbled as he focused on pushing the paths into him, despite the heavy resistance. The next moment, everything went eerily calm, the power storm up and stopped. Yet, the sky remained cracked, with a mass of darkness ready to consume them all. Since you all so graciously volunteered to come, you'll be the first to see my new power. Heavenly Sovereign had no more wounds on him. Even his left arm was there, something inconceivable since it was robbed by the Sea of Blackness at the very beginning. His aura, however, was gone. There was not a trace of Yuan Qi that could detect on him. It was as if he was just a mortal. This unnerved them, knowing that this meant he was worlds above them in power. He was now beyond what they could even sense. Chapter 1342 Overwhelming. For a long minute, Heavenly Sovereign just stared at his left hand. Well, this is different. He simply made a slow wave. However, what appeared to the others were afterimages. Elder Song gasped. How is he doing that? Isn't Supreme Stage supposed to be including just the powers from the paths used to reach it? Why is he showing some power from my creation path? Oh, so that's how you made the Heavenly Eye back then. Heavenly Sovereign caught onto his words while being unervingly calm as he gauged his new situation. For a moment there, to prevent your attempts after I forced the last two paths into me, I thought it would result in my swift and explosive demise, along with most if not all of the sacred domain. Heavenly Sovereign spoke, far calmer than he had been since he tried prying the paths from Zhuofan. He came to realize that the bewitching had affected his personality more than he had realized. It had nudged him to do crazy and suicidal things like what he did just now. It was a miracle he didn't die. What? There's no way the paths contain so much power. They couldn't possibly reduce the world to dust just like that. Dragon Ancestor denied, for even he couldn't do that at his level, which was around the Sovereign Stage. Since the Supreme Stage was just above it, it should not be such a drastic and insane gap in power between them. Could there? When I first caught a glimpse of there being something above the Sovereign Stage, not even I could imagine it would be to this extent. Words can't even begin to describe it. It's both relishing and humbling, thinking how I thought myself as the strongest in the sacred domain as a mere sovereign when I only know just one aspect of the world. This stage truly gives me leverage in all. Heavenly Sovereign moved a finger through the air, leaving behind a rend in space, which stayed there without healing. He had to pinch the two sides close for it to actually begin recovering. The sky suddenly turned prismatic and the group of sovereigns and sacred beasts rejoiced. Zhuofan must have done it. He can beat Heavenly Sovereign now. Lei Yuding cheered. Oh, sorry about that. And the event was cut short. I'm still getting new to the whole supreme thing. Heavenly Sovereign crushed their hopes like they were nothing. The more he displayed his power, it left more feeling ever less hopeful. It left them all knowing they couldn't hope to delay him even if they wanted to. In fact, they were wondering what Heavenly Sovereign was doing by putting his grand plan of cleansing the world on hold, despite pursuing the Supreme Stage for millions of years and going as far as treating everyone as his pawns. They weren't that stupid as to remind him of this inconsistency. Everyone wanted to live and pursue their goals and they were no different. If the guy liked to show off, then by all means let him. It would at least buy Zhuofan time to hopefully get to the Supreme Stage and save them from this nightmare. Little brother, why don't you come out? It's rude to stare. Heavenly Sovereign said to no one in particular, still testing to see what he could do. Sometimes he flung a purple lighting stronger than ever thought possible, making everything shiver. Or, he swiped his hand and unleashing a visible shockwave of raw power that left Gu Santong's pride of his mighty strength in shambles. They saw no one around one moment, then all of a sudden, Zhuofan stood across from Heavenly Sovereign after they blinked. Zhuofan. Lei Yuding cried out in worry and joy. Her felling had been on a roller coaster ever since she saw the raging storm. He ignored her and the others, only addressing Heavenly Sovereign. Did you change your mind about cleansing the world? Why didn't you do it the first moment you reached Supreme Stage? Or did the power get to your head? Now, you feel the necessity to show off parlor tricks to the ignorant. Who are you calling ignorant? I've been alive for millions of years before you were ever born. Dragon Ancestor did not take the remark kindly, despite knowing there was nothing he could do here. Let's dispense with the clowns first, shall we? Heavenly Sovereign smiled, calm and collected with his hands behind his back. Now wait just a minute. I'm no clown. I am the decimating Dragon Ancestor. You better start showing some res dash. Dragon Ancestor raved some more, only to find his view shifting from the barren wasteland with Zhuo Fan and Heavenly Sovereign standing there to Luo clan's main hall. There Luo Yunhai was in his seat as he conducted a meeting regarding the people of the sacred domain. Lei Yuding. Luo Yunchang was the first to react. What happened? How are you here? It must be Zhuo Fan or maybe Heavenly Sovereign. I couldn't tell as I sensed no action from their part. Lei Yuding replied, downcast. Is he fighting Heavenly Sovereign alone? Can he do it? Chu Qingqing asked with worry, Shangguan Qingyan holding her close for comfort. It's unclear as of yet. We're dealing with a level of cultivation never seen in the history of the sacred domain. Anything can happen. It was Yen Fu who spoke as he entered the hall, having just come back. Disciple. Elder Song gave him an appreciating look. You're sovereign already. And laughed at the discovery. That means Zhuo Fan finished his 10th path? Shui Ronghua cheered. Moments after the storm started ravaging the area the previously sea of blackness occupied, I finally completed my alchemy path and rushed to Zhuo Fan to help him. But when I got there he was already gone. Yen Fu explained. I can only assume that he either didn't need my help or was forced to act sooner. Kunping analyzed, we won't truly know for sure until we see Zhuo Fan come back alive, or when humanity gets wiped out. Chapter 1343, End. Why would I amuse myself with them? Why let them believe they were buying time so you could get to my level and fight me for the fate of humanity, against heaven's will? Why ask when you already know the truth, little brother? Heavenly Sovereign sat down on a mahogany chair as it and a chi board appeared on a table out of thin air. With the final 2 paths fused through sheer luck. I came to see that I've forced my way into the supreme stage, while you have earned yours. There's no doubt who is the strongest among us from this point alone. I could have started my plan by killing your friends and the sacred beasts, but we both know you'd just come out in time to stop me from doing any real harm. Heavenly Sovereign continued, setting the first black piece. So, you have no intention of fighting, none whatsoever? I thought your grand design has only ever been to cleanse the world? Did you perhaps change your mind and give up? Zhuo Fan sat on a materializing chair across from him and placed a white piece. Let's be honest here. My goal won't ever change, the only thing that did however is my mind, having found the calm I had before the sea of blackness. Heavenly Sovereign spoke. So, knowing that you cannot defeat me, you won't even try? Zhuo Fan asked curiously. Being at the supreme stage made me realize the full extent of the power invested in heaven's will. As I advanced, my senses sharpened to the entire sacred domain, with only the area around you completely dark. It's like heaven's will didn't want me to see you. My senses would not have failed unless you've grown above it. You found another stage beyond the supreme stage, haven't you? Since you earned your way into it, then you must also know the next step. Heavenly Sovereign avoided his question. Zhuo Fan nodded, recalling as he sat there in meditation and contemplating his friend's paths to complete his own. Once he finished with Elder Song's creation path, he only needed to complete the 10th. He had a few ideas where to start, but instead of letting logic think, he left it to his heart. It guided him to new concepts and ideas that had never crossed his mind ever before. He often wondered where they came from and why him, only to discover that they came from nowhere but within. Having trained in the true self art for so long, taking it to the point that his cultivation was down to the first layer of foundation establishment, all that remained was one single, yet monumental, step to reach its culmination. Zhuo Fan knew that fully training the true self art would lift him beyond everything he knew, open a new world for him to discover and maybe grow further still. You've overcome the limits of the sacred domain and heaven's will, didn't you? It's not that heaven's will hid you from my sight, just that you were beyond it as well. Heavenly Sovereign gave him a long look of envy, finding it a truly cruel irony how the situation had turned out. Wasn't he the one who pushed his little brother into becoming a sovereign just like him? Now it was his turn to be the one lagging behind. I'm now everywhere. Zhuo Fan's voice replied from all around Heavenly Sovereign. And nowhere. Only to continue sounding distant, despite him being right there across from him. Or was he? What will you do now? Fan asked after playing a little trick himself, grinning like a child. What would happen if I had succeeded? Will the sacred domain return to the times of old? Will it be back to the law of the jungle and not the wickedness of humanity twisting everything? Heavenly Sovereign asked his most dying question, for he had waited too long to see it fulfilled. But since that was now utterly impossible, the least he could do was have closure, to know if it would be just like he had hoped. No. You fail to understand that heaven's will is as much as our creator as we are its creator. From Star Eater's point of view, he saw it as two supreme experts who already knew how the battle would end. So one would just forfeit. Well, at least it ends on a happy note with everyone together. Do leave a comment on how you feel about this. Might change it or add more. Who knows? Either way, this is practically the end of the journey now. I thank all of you for your support. Once again, these are novels you might be interested in. Evolution begins with a big tree, starts out as a tree, enemy of mankind. I believe this and Fated Villain is the closest to SDE in terms of feel and build up. I am the Fated Villain. MC is also a villain. Schemes a ton. Power fantasy. There is also an epilogue next, grinning face. Chapter 1344 Epilogue. And where do you think you're going? A woman's yell cracked the silent void around a hovering courtyard among the stars. It's Cultivator's night out. Fan replied at the door, with Yongning following with an indignant look while carrying a baby just a few months old. If someone around here needs a break, it's us. Lei Yuding appeared with another baby, though she was careful enough not to wake the child in her arms as she glared at their husband, leaving them to bear all the weight of parenthood. I do this every day, and we all know what happened when Yuding tries to go out on her own. Fan spoke sagely, masking the urgency of getting some fresh air. Or was it chaotic energy from the stifling yells and demands of human babies? Chaos, just what the hell was I thinking when I accepted all of them? That wasn't the first time he asked himself this, and it wouldn't be the last. They say, the laughter of a child is the light of a home. So far he has yet to see any in this bottomless abyss. Lei Yuding shuddered, having recalled being eaten away by the wild and rampant energies outside their home, wondering even now how she kept sane. The involuntary stab of fear shook the child awake and made her wail, setting off the other couple of babies resting in other rooms. Couldn't you have kept it down? Chu Qingqing came over with a crying baby girl, looking at them with reproach. Just let him go. He's not going to stay long anyway. Fan took this chance to slip by, with Yongning and Lei Yuding looking at the door with longing for a break as well, but despite all having reached the supreme stage, they had to understand Dao if they wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with Fan and walk outside. The chaos outside powered them up, but it was also the reason for staying cooped up. Fan flew among the stars, mere dots of light of varying intensity, some even completely black. He did his job in snuffing out the dark one, returning them to the chaotic energy that made this universe. Hours later, he arrived at what could only be described as a tavern. Its exterior was weathered, with aged wooden beams and a thatched roof, as well as a sign above the entrance with ever-shifting wording above the image of a spilling tankard as other people entered. When it was his turn to enter, the words became Chinese, reading World's End. He didn't pay it any heed, ignoring the rowdy bunch in a corner and approaching the bar, where a hulking man with bull horns was cleaning a small tankard in his large hands. A newcomer would think it should have been reduced to pieces by now, yet it remained intact nonetheless. Hey Mino. The usual please. Fan was greeted with a smile. Would you stop calling me that? I do have a name, you know? The massive man grunted as he finished cleaning the mug and took another from beneath the bar filled with a swirl of colors, placing it in front of Fan. Just as Fan reached for it, he pulled it back. Aren't we forgetting something now? The massive man stared down at the guy half his size, yet Fan wasn't the least bit intimidated. Don't you trust me by now, Mino? Fan gave him an innocent look, but at the man's hard gaze he sighed in the end. Fine, here it is. Only when he pulled out a perfect white sphere, its mere presence warping the energy around it, did Mino hand over the mug. Great job as always. Of all the guys working for me, you do the finest job of getting the purest traits of a dying world. Don't I know it? Fan sighed. In the 2 years since he ascended from the sacred domain, he came to realize he wasn't the only world expert around. In fact, there were countless of them. But as with every civilization, they tended to gather in cities, towns, sects, or, in this case, a peculiar tavern. He found that among all the cultivators here, he was the only one who reached this stage on the inside of Daoin himself. All the rest just used their homeworld's nature to gain insight into this stage, which makes recycling dead worlds back into the chaotic energy and collecting their remnant aspects easier. It was with these aspects that one grew further, or by going back to their homeworld and understanding further of the heaven there, but the world would crumble otherwise. It wasn't much of a shock to hear the world stage was not the end of cultivation, but it was truly mind-opening to hear of the ways spiritual energy appeared for others, such as chi, nen, chakra, mana, and so forth. Why do you keep calling me Mino anyway? What part of me makes it look cute? Asked the big man. Zhua Fan gave a casual reply. Since you're a bull demon turned human, I'm calling you Xiao and I-Mino-. Blast this automated translation, it takes the fun out of jokes. He grumbled in the end. Mino sympathized, having his own many jokes ruined at the hands of the chaotic energy. Since all our powers come from the chaotic energy that made our homeworlds, our languages, despite how different they are automatically filtered into the language we are most familiar with. I know, but it still sucks. Zhua Fan whined as he took a sip of his colorful drink, a veritable rainbow passing through his throat and into his stomach before fading out. That hit the spot. Oh, and thanks for that array flag. Without it, who knows how many milk bottles would have gained sense by now. My wives don't have the heart to feed my kids with them. In this seemingly empty void, anything would be instilled with primordial chaotic energy and would soon gain sentience, unless someone barred its entry. No problem. Though why did you have to shoot yourself in the foot like that? Isn't one wife enough? I learned my lesson when my wife found out our maid was hitting on me and almost crucified her. Mino shuddered. Women are scary, especially in a pack. I was in a bad place back then, but I still think it will all work out in the end. Zhua Fan paused and focused on the door just as someone came in. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Not funny, Fanny. The humanoid Black Panther shot back, moving to a table. Zhua Fan ignored him. I wasn't talking to you, now was I, big brother? As the panther left, a man in Taoist robes appeared in sight, bearing a striking similarity to Zhua Fan. He wasn't fazed at the greeting, taking a seat next to Zhua Fan. How long has it been, 2 years? Zhua Fan's grin was most annoying. Try 2 million. Leaving me stuck there was like being in prison. Watching the world go about me without having any means of interacting with it was torture, but it was exactly what I needed to reach your stage. But you knew that already, didn't you, little brother? Heavenly Sovereign spoke in a flat tone. I was still new with my worldly powers, he chuckled at that, but it all worked out in the end and now you're here. You're not still sour about everything, are you? I did pay a visit to your house thinking about taking your family hostage, but I figured it would be a relief instead. No doubt you'd be running around in joy while I had to keep the hostages healthy. Heavenly Sovereign smirked. That's so nice of you. Zhua Fan trailed with gloomy eyes. Being a parent was easy when you didn't have to change diapers or get them to sleep. Using magic wasn't an option at such a frail age. Zhua Fan, he's your brother for real? Mino shouted in shock. The brothers only now noticed the eerie silence around them. Is that a bad thing? Zhua Fan raised an eyebrow. It is when you both are world experts coming from the same homeworld. Many others would kill to know how you did it, wanting to establish their own factions, clans, or sects here. Without an expert from the same homeworld, no one would trust anyone to share power when they build it, which is why this place is so peaceful, destroying remnant worlds and cultivating peace. But you just destroyed the very balance of this universe. Mino explained as he had the tavern door open and pushed the two out, seeing the other glaring guests ready to draw blood. I don't want any part in it. You're on your own. Mino slammed the door behind them, leaving the two in the starry black void. Well, brother, doesn't this bring back memories? Zhua Fan smirked. Heavenly Sovereign saw the incoming mob, probably notified by the tavern's guests, with a serious look and said, Yes, unfortunately. I recall it being around this time you betrayed me last time. Haha, that's all in the past. Now it's us against the universe. Back then, our homeworld was at stake. Shall we? Zhua Fan raised a carefree eyebrow, not minding the ever-growing opposition getting closer and closer. For the first time, Heavenly Sovereign grinned and said, Let's. The end. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.